Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel, and today we will discuss why the Lowrider S is not the bike for me. But before we get started, we're going to have a little quick look at a viewer's bike. This is Frank the Tank's 2010 Fat Boy Low. Very nice looking bike. Looks like we might have some smoked out signal lights. We've got the #1 skull covers on there, some slash cut exhaust. Very nice bike. And if any of you want to email a picture of your bike and get it up on the channel, my email is in the description. But anyway, let's get back to what we're here to talk about, and that is the Lowrider S. But first, let's have a little look around at this bike. So here we are, ladies and gents. This is the 2023 Lowrider S. Now, I would love to be doing this video outside where it's very nice and have the sun glinting off it with a nice background, but I'll tell you this, it is about -20 outside, so we are not going to be doing that. Now, as you can see, I've got a little windshield on here, I've got ape hangers, I've got forward controls, and we will be getting to that. Now, one thing I will say about this video, anything I say is basically strictly subjective about this bike. Basically, my opinion, my feelings, and really, there is nothing wrong with this bike whatsoever. This is a great bike overall, so it's not meant to disparage anything about this particular model. It's just simply this is simply a video about why this particular bike is not the one for me. So the first thing I'm going to get into is something that's more of a psychological thing for me, and that is, #1, I was never a fan of the Dynas. I'm not really the club style guy. I am not the the Dyna bro. And I think if you look at the way this bike is set up, you can tell that. I've got a small little windshield rather than a fairing. I've got ape hangers rather than tall risers and T-bar. I've got forward controls. You can tell that I'm not your general Dyna guy. Now, that being the case, never really being into Dynas when they were around, the Lowrider S prior to 2018 was a Dyna. And that's kind of always the way I've always looked at this bike, that the Lowrider S is basically a Dyna made into a Softail. And I know I shouldn't have that thought, because it is indeed a Softail, which is what I'm interested in. But something about the fact that it kind of derived from a Dyna, I've always looked at it like a Dyna, and that always makes me feel a little strange about the model just in general. Now, let's talk about the look of this bike. And when I say look, I'm not talking about styling, because the blacked out bikes, I wasn't a big fan of them when they first came out. However, I will say it's definitely grown on me, and I definitely do like this deckled tank opposed to the badging. The thing about this bike, or this model in particular, is that I generally go for bikes looks-wise that are lower and with a little more rake. Something more like a Fat Boy, which I am waiting on. This bike definitely sits up higher than some others. And let's be perfectly honest, it's set up for functionality. It's got the higher ground clearance, so it sits up higher. This back fender sits up higher over the tire. That's due to a shock that's about an inch taller for better suspension, which this bike definitely has. And the rake on this bike is a little shorter, which, again, it's all made for function. However, that being the case, I am still interested more in those bikes that have a little more rake or a little lower. I also like the feeling of, sitting in a bike rather than sitting on a bike. And although this is a very comfy seat for me, I've always felt like I'm sitting up on top of it, and that's more than likely because of the higher seat height and the higher ground clearance. But again, it's made for function, and it functions very well. It's just the way it's set up. It just doesn't fit my personal style. Now, while we're talking about the looks of the bike, this is kind of a little off-topic kind of thing, kind of a breakaway segment, and that is, in my opinion, I think they should change the names or switch the names between the Breakout and the Lowrider, because the Lowrider S is not a low bike. If someone said to me, picture a motorcycle called a Lowrider, I would picture this. I would not picture the Lowrider S. I would look at something that's slammed closer to the ground with some rake to it. That to me looks like a Lowrider. Now, on the other hand, if someone said Breakout, I would think more of a bike like this. If I was going to, say, break out of somewhere like jail or something like that, and I wanted to hop on a bike that's quick and fast and agile with good suspension, this would be the bike I would pick. So come on, Harley, as far as I'm concerned, you got a bike like a Fat Boy. It's fat, it's heavy. I could see why you call it a Fat Boy. You got a Sportster S. Well, it's a sporty type bike. Why can't you have? I just think they should change names. That's just my little opinion. But anyway, back to what we were talking about. Now, here's something that makes me feel kind of makes me feel silly to even say this, but this bike, quite frankly, for me, is almost too sporty. And I guess what I mean by that is this bike is set up basically for performance. It is one of Harley's performance cruisers. It is a fast bike. It has good suspension, especially the front. I really love the front suspension with those inverted forks. It's meant to be ridden more aggressively. It is something you might take canyon carving, or, those windy roads, taking corners at a high speed, leaning her over a little bit. And quite frankly, that's not my style. That's not my style of riding. And I have to say, I really did enjoy the bike when I first got it. I did. But as I rode it more, I just realized that I'm just not using it for what it's meant for. That's what it feels like. It feels like that bike would be much better off in somebody else's hands other than mine. Somebody who is looking to really get on the throttle and honk on it. Another thing about around here is it's flat. I live in the prairies. I live right basically in the middle of Canada, and we have a lot of straight roads. We have a lot of roads with long sweeping curves, something that would be set up more for like a Fat Boy, which is what I'm going back to. So really, I don't get the use out of it that I want to. It almost feels to me like if I had a Pan America and I never took it off the pavement. I'm just not using it for what it's designed for, and it's not my style, my personal style of riding. Now, the last thing about this bike really doesn't have to do with the Lowrider S as a motorcycle or that model in general. It actually comes down to the circumstances of getting it and owning it. When I bought the bike, I had the worst dealership experience I have ever had. I tried out a new dealer, which was the wrong move. Anybody who's watched this channel has seen probably that video. If you want to look at it, it's right up there. Also, after having the dealership experience, then it had to go back to the dealership a month later with a shifting issue, which led to another month and a half of it sitting in the shop and having basically the transmission guts completely replaced. And Harley still to this day cannot tell me what was wrong with it. Apparently they still don't know, but I did videos on that too. They lost parts along the way. It was just a great big mess. Now that is nothing about the actual model of the bike. It's purely circumstances, but in my mind, I always seem to have it always seemed like there's a dark cloud over the bike. Like, I don't want to use the word cursed, but it's just like I'm always waiting for the next thing. Is something else going to happen? Like, I almost feel like the bike was put together at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon when everybody just wanted to get out of the factory and off to the weekend. Just slap it together. I don't know. something about that bike, just the circumstances surrounding it has just been, I don't know how else to put it other than just saying it always seems like there's a bit of a dark cloud over it. And I'm not, the memories of going through everything with it so far, even though it is a great bike, it's just, it's in the back of my head all the time. So there you go, kids. Those are my reasons for why the Lowrider S is just not personally for me. You know, I like bikes that are a little lower, a little more raked, a little beefier, I guess, and that aren't maybe quite as performance oriented. Maybe I'm more of a looking more at a style than a performance type thing. That's just me, and I'm sure there's lots of people who would say the exact opposite. And again, that is a great bike. There's nothing wrong with that bike. It performs great. It is fast, good suspension. You can lean it. It's agile. If you have that bike and that's the way you ride, then you made a good choice. It's just for me personally, just not really my style, unfortunately. I gambled and I lost, but oh well. But that's the video for today. Next week, I believe we have the Harley's 2024 reveal coming out. So next Saturday, I'll be going through that. I'm assuming probably they're going to be revealing a lot of stuff in relation to their baggers and touring models, which really isn't my style either. But we'll go over the new stuff that Harley comes out with next week. So you guys have a good rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one.